Hi, I'm Helen Bauer, and this is the Heart of Hospice podcast. The Heart of Hospice podcast is your source for compassionate and informative discussions about hospice and end-of-life care. I'm a certified hospice and palliative care nurse with over 15 years of experience. Whether you're a caregiver, someone with a serious illness, or you simply need to know more about hospice care, this podcast is for you. Join me as we explore all the aspects of hospice, from the details of caregiving to the emotional and spiritual dimensions of end-of-life journeys. For more resources and to connect with me, visit theheartofhospice.com and find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Keep listening for today's episode.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
The Heart of Hospice podcast is being sponsored by The Death Deck, featuring the End of Life Deck. The End of Life Deck is used by many healthcare providers as a casual way to help start conversations about end-of-life wishes. It helps people communicate what matters most to them. To learn more about the EOL deck, visit thedeathdeck.com. This episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast is being brought to you by GrandPad. This holiday season, give the gift of connection with GrandPad. GrandPad is the all-in-one tablet designed specifically for seniors. This Christmas, give the gift that keeps on giving, a world where no senior feels lonely or isolated. GrandPad is more than a gift, it's a gateway to cherished family memories. To learn more about GrandPad, visit grandpad.net/THOH. GrandPad, bringing families together.
I'm talking with Danielle Franck of Flexmort today about supporting families with an innovative product to allow them to spend more time with a loved one at the time of death. My guest, Danielle Franck, is the business development executive in the U.S. for Flexmort, a company that designs and manufactures flexible mortuary solutions for the storage and cooling of someone who's passed away. Danielle's really focused on enhancing the quality and accessibility of after-death care services so that every family receives the compassionate bereavement support they need. She's also passionate about fostering open discussions around death and loss. She has a personal story as well as her professional experience. She's got experience working in healthcare as a medical assistant and a chaplain. She's got a bachelor's degree in applied science with a focus on religious study, and she's also completed additional training on grief and bereavement. This is a very interesting conversation, something new that we have never talked about on the podcast before. And Danielle's going to be sharing a personal experience that she had of using a Cuddle Cot after the birth of her son, who was stillborn. So we want to warn listeners today that this is a very emotionally challenging conversation about the death of a child, about the death of a baby. So if this is something that is not suitable for you to listen to, disconnect, catch us another time, and please take good care of yourself. Danielle's going to be explaining how the Cuddle Cot or Cuddle Blanket can be used to allow families to have a better after-death experience, to spend more time with the body of a loved one, to engage in rituals that are meaningful, and just to have time with their person. The Cuddle Cot and the Cuddle Blanket also allows families to have a home funeral for their loved one as well, and she's going to talk about some details about that. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. There's a lot to learn. Danielle, welcome to the Heart of Hospice podcast. I'm so glad to have you here with me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Helen.
It's going to be a good conversation. I am completely ready to learn from you. But we're going to start with an icebreaker question that I did not send to you in advance.
Okay.
It's not like a test question. It's a personal question that you can't get it wrong. So
okay.
No test anxiety here. If you could only have one color of clothing in your closet, what color would that be?
That's an easy one for me. I would say blue. It's my favorite color, and it's probably the color I have the most of.
I like that.
Yeah.
I have had so many guests that have answered that question because it's one of my favorites. And I had one guest that said purple. And you can just envision an all purple wardrobe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It hurts
That's
a little bit.
interesting.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It's like bright on your eyeballs.
Right. But I like blue. I think that's good. Well, we are going to dive into our conversation today. You've got a story to share. We're going to be talking about a new product that can be utilized at the time of death, some really interesting things, and I'm excited to have you here with me. We do know there's some sensitive topics we're going to be talking about today, and I've already told my listeners that there is some heavy water, some rough water ahead. So I want to tell you in advance, I'm grateful that you're here to share your story and the work that you're doing, because I think it has a lot of meaning, and I hope it does for you. So let's jump in. Introduce me to the Cuddle Cot and the Cuddle Blanket that your company, Flexmort, is making and selling.
Yeah. So Flexmort makes cooling mortuary products. The Cuddle Cot is a cooled bassinet that is used for babies that are stillborn or die in infancy. It is used, it cools down the baby's body and it slows down the natural changes that occur. It allows family time to make memories, footprints, handprints, have photographs taken, and then also to have family members from out of town come in and meet baby and support the parents. It allows parents to hold the baby while it's being cooled or to put it in the bassinet that's next to them. So the baby is always close by rather than being taken back and forth to the morgue or using ice packs or things like that. And then we have our Cuddle Blanket that is recently being launched into the US, and that is a cooled blanket that is used for pediatrics and adults that have passed away. The idea is that it also cools the body. It slows down changes after a person passes away. It allows family time to say goodbye. Again, if there's family that's out of town, it gives them the opportunity to come in and say goodbye. And rather than having the funeral home come in and take the person right away, family can say their goodbyes and just kind of grieve, whether they're in a home, whether they're in a hospice. It allows them to have after-death care from the same providers that have been caring for them up until death.
So for someone who might be listening that hasn't experienced how we take care of a patient and a family at the time of death, a lot of times that connection is rushed through.
Very much so. Many people say, they wish they had more time to say goodbye. Oftentimes when somebody passes away, it seems like the immediate next thing is call the funeral home and have them come get the body. So this just allows more time for them to stay, again, whether they're at home, whether they're in hospice, or, if it's a pediatric hospital, they can stay in that setting and just give themselves the time to kind of process what happened, whether they want to wash. I had a lady who said she really wishes that she would have had time to wash her dad's hair. And so in this situation, it would have allowed her that time to take care of him, kind of like one last ritual before they're taken away.
Right. Something very personal. And we're going to talk more about that. It's really an interesting component to add into hospice and death care. So we're going to dive deeper into that in a little bit. But you have a very personal story with the Cuddle Cot. And I'm going to invite you to share that story today with me and my listeners.
Yeah, I enjoy sharing my story. I know how important it is to help people understand that they're not alone. My fourth son was stillborn in 2016. My water broke early, and then I ended up having cord prolapse. So I delivered him, and he had passed before I delivered him. So the hospital I was at had a Cuddle Cot, and we were able to use that. We were able to keep him for 12 hours. Our deacon came in and did a blessing. Our family got to come in and say goodbye to him. We got to have pictures taken of him, and it gave us just a little more time to process what had happened and then time to say goodbye before the funeral home came and got him the next morning.
So, Danielle, I want to ask you, what was your son's name?
His name was Tanner.
Tanner. So I want to ask just a few very gentle questions, and you choose what you're comfortable with. So this was your third or fourth child?
My fourth child, my fourth son. Yeah.
Your fourth. So you have three boys.
Well, I have four boys because then I had one after him. So
gotcha.
5 boys if you count him.
Gotcha. So were your kids able to, and did you feel comfortable bringing them in after the birth? Because that is one of the ways a Cuddle Cot and a Cuddle Blanket could be used.
Oh, absolutely. We questioned it at first when the nurse asked us. And it's one of those things you never think about when you're pregnant. Like, you don't think you're going to have to plan a funeral for your baby or decide on pictures. And we were a little hesitant. Our boys were 5 months old and 6 and 8. So we had just done our gender reveal, I think a couple weeks before that. So we did decide that we wanted to have them come in. We have one picture that has the 4 of them together. And as much as we were unsure if we should have done it, it was one of the best decisions that we made because it gave them the closure to see him and to realize that he was born, but he's just had passed away. So, yeah.
What kind of support did you get from the staff, the healthcare staff that was working with you?
We were so lucky. We had the most amazing nurses. The nurse that took his pictures came in, and I just remember her saying, as she was positioning him and moving him, she just kept saying how beautiful he was and saying his name. And it was so wonderful to have somebody acknowledge that he was a baby. It's different than when you have a live baby. She was treating him just like he was a baby that was healthy, that was alive. She would move him ever so gently. She just kept, he's so beautiful. Look at how beautiful he is. And one of the other nurses that we had, the same thing. She used his name when she talked to us. When she came in the next morning to tell us the funeral home was there, she sat next to me and held my hand, and she cried with me. And just having that compassion was huge. It's sad to me when I hear stories about other moms that didn't have such great care, and it makes me realize how lucky I was, because in such a terrible situation, the care that I received did make enough of a difference that I can look back on that day and still be able to smile just a little bit.
Yeah, it enabled you to create Tanner's legacy right then, which is an amazing thing, right? Because legacy stories are a huge part of losing someone that we love. And when you have an infant like that there's no life lived, no stories to tell, that's your story.
It is.
That's the story.
It
That's
is.
his story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how long did you use the Cuddle Cot and keep him with you? Was it 12 hours?
We were able to use it 12 hours. Most hospitals allow 2 to 3 days is about the norm. In the UK, which is where the product is made, the Cuddle Cot's a lot more it's used at home. So some families will take their babies home for up to a week and they'll use the Cuddle Cot for up to a week. But in the US, we're not quite there yet with our death culture. So in the hospital, it's 2 to 3 days is about the max.
2 to 3 days. Yeah. So death culture and our perception of how those things should be managed, I think that's really embodied in this knee-jerk reaction to a death, as you call the funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
Mom needs to go immediately.
Yeah.
When in reality, there's no law about that. There's no requirement. If you need to wait for someone, if you have a ritual, if you want to bathe, if you want to have people gather, all of that is okay. So having a cooling blanket or a cuddle cot really enables that extended time to be spent with the body of someone that you care about. I think that's pretty remarkable.
I agree. It's, we don't think about how important it is to give ourselves the time to say goodbye and to process the death that happened, no matter what the relationship is. If it's, your child, your parent, your sibling, your best friend, it's important that we allow ourselves the time to properly say goodbye.
Absolutely. So how do you think having that time, those extended hours, and being able to use the Cuddle Cot, how do you think that affected your grief journey?
I think it helped me to choose the path of moving forward and trying to find joy again. It allowed me to, it didn't help me have closure by any means, but it helped me to, I would say some people sit in their grief a bit and maybe they just find sorrow and they kind of, sit in the sorrow and don't find a way out. I think the time allowed me the opportunity to sit with my son, to spend time with him. And it made me then want to do better for him. It made me want to, okay, I had this opportunity. Now, how can I help other parents have that opportunity? And we see so many lost families that do that same thing. They have a loss and they want to know, how can we support another lost family? Can we donate another Cuddle Cot? What can we do to provide this support? Because you want to do something in memory of your child often. And if you have that proper support, you have the ability to do that.
So let's talk about the best times to use a cuddle blanket or a cuddle cot.
Sure. I'll start with the Cuddle Cot. Oftentimes, so they're used in labor and delivery wards. That's where most of our Cuddle Cots are. We also have a couple of pediatric palliative homes that have a Cuddle Cot for the same situation after a baby's passed. But immediately after birth is the best idea. Some parents like to hold their baby while they're still warm, so giving them a little bit of time to hold the baby and then utilizing the Cuddle Cot right away is the best practice. So then it can start to slow down the changes, because oftentimes babies start to change pretty quickly after you're given birth to them. So I would say right away for that. And then also with the Cuddle Blanket, the same idea. Some hospices do cold rooms. So after someone passes away, you like crank up the air and then, to slow down the changes again. It's the same idea as like a morgue. You're trying to cool the body. So again, immediately after death is the best practice.
So home funerals are a big movement in the United States. We're not there yet, right? Because we are so death phobic in the U.S.
Yes.
Westernized views of death and how we process all that. It's still, we got a long way to go to unlearn a lot of this stuff. But home funerals are on the rise. So cuddle cots, cuddle blankets, those are perfect for home funerals.
They are. They allow, rather than using ice packs or dry ice, it's a more consistent cooling method. They're portable. It allows, so if you put the cooling blanket over the person, and then you can do a duvet or any sort of blanket or quilt, if there's a special like family blanket, it just kind of allows it to be more of a natural cooling. And a lot of people are getting away from embalming, so this supports the use of the people who are trying to be a little more natural, and also the setting of people looking at human composting and aquamation and all those things are on the rise too. So it's definitely, we're definitely thinking it'll work in those spaces as well.
Yeah, it's perfectly suited for things like that. We're going to break for just a minute. This isn't the end of the episode. There's more to come, so stay connected.
The Death Deck now has another tool for families, caregivers, and healthcare providers to use. It's called the End of Life Deck. Just like the Death Deck, the End of Life Deck uses multiple choice and open-ended questions to facilitate conversations about end-of-life wishes. Certified hospice and palliative care nurse Helen Bauer shares why she uses the EOL deck.
As a hospice nurse, I've seen the challenges people experience when trying to communicate their end-of-life wishes to family and friends. The EOL deck is the perfect blend of humor and reflection, making discussions about final wishes less painful and even a little fun.
The EOL deck can be used by social workers, chaplains, nurses, and end-of-life doulas. To learn more about the EOL deck and to purchase this helpful conversation starter, visit thedeathdeck.com. This episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast is being brought to you by GrandPad. This holiday season, give the gift of connection with GrandPad, the perfect way to keep your older loved ones close, even when you're far apart. GrandPad is the all-in-one tablet designed specifically for seniors, making it easier than ever to share holiday cheer across generations. With secure, simple video calling and photo sharing, you can virtually join in on decorating the tree or watch as your little ones open their presents, no matter the distance. Spread joy throughout the year with GrandPad's user-friendly interface, allowing seniors to enjoy music, games, photos, as well as emails from family. No need to worry about Wi-Fi setup. GrandPad comes with 4G LTE cellular service included. This Christmas, give the gift that keeps on giving, a world where no senior feels lonely or isolated. With GrandPad, you're not just giving a device, you're giving the warmth of family connection. Make this holiday season unforgettable. To learn more about GrandPad, visit grandpad.net/THOH or call 1-888-904-4723 today to order your GrandPad. It's more than a gift, it's a gateway to cherished family moments. GrandPad, bringing families together.
So what does a Cuddle Blanket actually look like?
So there's just this big blue cooling pad. It's connected to the system that runs the water through it. And then there's a thick blue blanket that goes on top of the cooling pad. And so the idea is to wrap it around the person's body. It goes on top of them, and then it just keeps the cold over the person and kind of cocoons them in the cool.
So it's got tubing that connects to some sort of unit that makes it run and circulates the cool water through there?
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Okay. Well, so as a consumer, if I were going to do this, say with a loved one of mine, and we were going to have sort of a visitation at home, which is what people used to do, right? Bodies were laid out in the parlor. That's how we got funeral parlors. That's where that name came from. If I was going to do that, what would the setup look like? A full adult. Do the blankets come in different sizes?
So there's a basic size, and then we also have a bariatric cooling pad. So it can be used from a child of over the age of 1 all the way up to, really any size of adult if you use our bariatric pads. So
is the unit that makes the blanket work, that keeps it cool, what's the noise level like? Because so if I was having something like that, hosting it in my home, you wouldn't want you wouldn't want it to sound like a big generator. You know how they have the huge hum. What do the machines sound like?
It's whisper quiet. You can't even hear it. We have them running at exhibits, or if we, are testing it, you can't hear the product at all. You can't hear it running. So, and it runs at a consistent, the Cuddle Cot, the Cuddle Blanket runs at a consistent 40 degrees.
Okay, so it stays like that. I like the idea that it would be quiet, and then that way, and some families don't need that, right?
Right.
Sometimes when you have families gathered at a bedside, they're telling jokes, they're telling the old stories and laughing at how goofy things were and the crazy stuff they all did together.
Yeah.
But to have a machine in the background making extra noise, and for a lot of people, those rituals, like what you were mentioning, bathing someone or washing their hair, grooming them, maybe dressing them in a sacred garment if they have a faith ritual like that, having something that's loud or disruptive would be distracting, and I think actually it would get on your nerves.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, when you're
Very
trying,
much so.
yeah, when you're trying to create a sacred space and do something special.
Yeah, no, the way that you can use it, it's actually, you can conceal it pretty well by, using a blanket to cover it up. And people probably wouldn't even necessarily know that it was a cooling blanket if you didn't tell them.
Oh, that's interesting. Because if you're covering it up with a quilt or a duvet, something that's personal, right? A personal bed covering, it would just seem like the cuddle blanket's not even there.
Right. Yeah.
So we're talking about home funerals, visitations, anytime you want to spend time with a loved one. If you're waiting for family members to come in, if you want those special rituals, the photographs, the family to come in and spend time with them to say goodbyes, the what it was, fingerprints, handprints, and footprints of a baby.
Yeah.
Those are all great times to use the cuddle blankets. So as a person who has experienced a profound loss of a child, what would you want someone to experience if they're using a cuddle cot or cuddle blanket themselves? What would you like that experience for them to be?
I think having the opportunity to have as much time as possible. The gift of time is, what we like to say our products allow. It's not being rushed to say goodbye or feeling like, you have to hurry up and make arrangements. It's just allowing you time to sit in your grief, to process what happened, to get the support that you need. If you have friends and family that can come in, I really think the time is so incredibly important. In the situation of a baby, you have a whole lifetime that you are dreaming of. So this bit of time that you have with a cuddle cot is all the time that you get, and being able to be the one to say, okay, I'm ready now. I feel like I've had enough time, and I don't know that we ever really feel like we've had enough time.
Right.
But saying, I had more time than I would have gotten, and the same idea with the cuddle blanket. For pediatrics, I've heard from a mom in the UK that was able to use one in the pediatric hospice, and she just was able to sit with her son in his bed and just hold his hand. And again, it just allowed her this time to say goodbye, that she didn't feel rushed. She didn't feel like someone was waiting on her to hurry up, like she was doing something unusual by spending this time with her son after he had passed away.
I think that's a bad habit, at least here in the U.S., of hospice folks when there's been a death. I hate to say it. I am a hospice nurse, and I hope that I've never done that to a family. But when you have a busy day and one of your patient dies and you go to do that death event, there should never be any rushing. They should never feel like you're pushing them to get this, to keep this process moving. It should be all about the family.
Absolutely. It's the idea of after death care. You're caring for that patient before they die, and they should have just as much dignified care after death as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why hospice agencies provide bereavement care. That is the very beginning of our bereavement plan of care. And if a bereavement plan of care includes a cuddle cot, cuddle blanket, and allows the body to stay with the family that little bit longer that they need, that's an important need that the hospice people need to meet.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure we're all that great at doing that.
I don't think so. And I don't know if we maybe understand, the importance of having that time in a setting like a home or a hospice house, as opposed to, the funeral home where you have your final viewing. It's more of a natural, I would say, compassionate environment. You have these nurses that have helped care for your loved one, and you know that they are going to provide the best care, right? So you want them to provide the best after death care as well. They're going to be gentle with them. They're going to allow you to do the things that you want to do, the rituals, the goodbyes, the, holding the hand, whatever you need as the loved one to say goodbye.
So that physical connection that you have with your loved one that has died is really important. But
Yes.
but having that person at home in a bed, even a hospital bed, right? Hospital beds aren't great, but you can take those rails off. The bed can be lowered, people can be there at the bedside. It's so different from someone, so let's be nitty-gritty with this, someone who's already been in a casket.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you get next to someone or hold their hand? Or, I think it's awkward. As a shorter person, I have trouble reaching over because, it's just awkward. And so it seems impersonal to me. Seems impersonal.
I agree.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. So what kinds of organizations here in the U.S. are already using the Cuddle Cot or the Cuddle Blanket? And who would be interested? What kind of organizations do you think could benefit from having one?
Yeah, so the Cuddle Cot, we have about 4,000 of those in the US so far. It's mostly labor and delivery hospitals. Some of the pediatric palliative hospice homes also have one. If you have, like perinatal hospice, that can be utilized in that situation. The Cuddle Blanket would be good really in any hospice setting. Specifically, I would say pediatric palliative or hospice homes. In the UK, so I know this is something that that we're not necessarily need to touch on, but in the UK they have 54 pediatric hospice homes, maybe give or take a few more than that. And in the US we have about 5. So being able to allow the family that are in these homes the opportunity to have a bit more time to say goodbye is super important, and that's what the Cuddle Blanket would allow. And in a normal hospice as well. If you're utilizing it in a hospice house for family to come in, if someone is on hospice at home and they're able to, keep the loved one a little bit longer. And as you mentioned, some of the green funeral homes, some of the facilities that are doing terramation, human composting, aquamation, getting away from the embalming and having a more natural way to cool the body. Some religions, don't believe in embalming, and it's also a great opportunity in those situations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can see this being utilized for folks that are doing family-led death care.
Yes.
Not necessarily a home funeral, but family-led at a funeral home with a more green approach, more personal approach. I can see that being utilized. And anybody with a hospice home, an Omega Network home, a personal care home with folks who are on hospice could benefit from having something like this.
You're exactly right. We did a visit at the Natural Funeral in Denver, near Denver, and Lafayette, Colorado, actually. And in that situation, he took us out to view the chapel, and I could just picture the Cuddle Blanket being in that situation for a family to have a natural funeral. And he said he allowed family to brush their loved one's hair, to care for them as they needed, and having a Cuddle Blanket to provide more time to do that and to, create a more consistent atmosphere, something that would be really wonderful.
It sounds like it. That would be awesome. So I wanted to ask something, touch back on the practical use of the Cuddle Blanket. So a lot of people, when they have a home visitation or a home viewing, they put buckets of dry ice, either in the room or underneath the bed. Do you have to have that additional cooling with the Cuddle Blanket?
No, because as long as you are wrapping the body appropriately and you're kind of tucking it in, it allows for the cold air not to escape out, and it keeps it all over the body.
Got it. I like that. So it's a low maintenance thing because it's a standalone piece of equipment.
It is. And we've had some interest in funeral homes utilizing it for transporting a body. It can be hooked up into a car as well, depending on, there's technical things that have to happen, but
right.
For transporting rather than using ice to transport a body from one place to another, it can also be used in that situation.
Interesting. For folks who are listening, we have a lot of folks who work in end-of-life care. They're either hospice professionals or they're working as end-of-life doulas and death doulas. How can they find you guys, learn more about how to use it, and maybe purchase one for themselves or their organizations to utilize in their own practices?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, Flexmort is based out of the UK, but we have myself and then Lindsay, we are both in the US. We have a service team in the US as well. We are keeping stock of the Cuddle Cot and eventually the Cuddle Blanket in Pennsylvania in a warehouse. So if someone's interested, they can get on our website, flexmort.com. They can email our team from there, or I'm more than happy for anyone to reach out to me. I don't know if you want to put my email address in, or we're on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. We are always happy to provide a Zoom call or virtual training. What we're going to do in the near future is to provide scheduled training online, so we can have almost like Cuddle Cot super users in the hospitals. As you're probably aware, being a nurse, sometimes we have one or two specific bereavement designated nurses. And those are the ones that know about the bereavement tools, like especially the Cuddle Cot. So we're hoping that more nurses can become comfortable with it. So whoever is on shift, whoever has to care for that patient can be comfortable using the Cuddle Cot and comfortable offering it to them.
So if someone were to have a death in a home and want to get a Cuddle Cot after the patient's already died, is that a possibility to ship it that quickly? Or is this something that you would want to find an organization that has one in your area?
I would say find one in your area. As you mentioned, death doulas are huge advocates for after-death care and transitioning. So if there's, death doulas that are interested in purchasing both a Cuddle Cot or a Cuddle Blanket to use, it would be something you can offer to the family to allow them more time. As far as like renting them, we don't really have any organizations that are doing that right now. And because of it being designated to a hospital, not too many are willing to loan them out. But if you knew ahead of time, if there was an organization, that was willing to do that, it would be a possibility.
So are they reusable? I guess I should have asked that earlier.
Yeah, they're reusable. Yep. As long as, so we have sterilizing tablets that go inside of them just in case, it happens to maybe not get drained all the way between uses. The Cuddle Blanket doesn't have to be drained after each use, but the Cuddle Cot does, just to allow it to get cleaned out and drained.
Got it. So Danielle, as we come to the end of our conversation, I want to ask you to share again something personal and something meaningful. Your time, the extra time that you were given with your baby. What would you say was the most meaningful aspect of that for you?
Looking back, I would say, honestly, having my boys be able to come in and say goodbye, having the one picture that I have of all of them is something that I cherish and something that I think really shows like he was here, he was part of our family. So I would say that time that it allowed my boys to come in to say goodbye. And to me, the rest of our family as well, but mostly his brothers.
Yeah, for them to be together. I love the way you're creating meaning. Thank you for being courageous enough to share your story with us. You're doing some fantastic work at Flexmort. I hope this message gets out to a ton of end-of-life workers because I think it's a great thing. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you, Helen. I appreciate you allowing me to share my story and to talk about it.
Thanks for listening to the Heart of Hospice podcast. Check out our sponsor in the show notes and please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We would appreciate it if you would share this episode with your friends and family and anyone who needs to know more about hospice. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.